Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child in Life podcast. Military families are not like your traditional family. They are strong, brave, resilient, and some of the most incredible people I know. My name is Gracie, a U.S. Army brat, and I am your host. I am honored to be able to give military family members like myself a place for them to share their stories and experiences in the military life. Stay tuned for this week's guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Grace of Military Child in Life. Today, I'm here with military brat and former military spouse, Heather. So, Heather, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I am doing just fine, and thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. So, can you start by kind of telling us about your journey in relation to the military? So, from military brat to military spouse and how that's all played out for you.
Well, I was born at what is formerly known as Fort Bragg in North Carolina. My dad joined the Army in 1969. So my Army experience, I think he got out when I was like 2 or 3. So it was very short-lived and I don't recall it. After that, he was in the Navy. So all in all, he was in, I think, 22 years in the military.
Wow.
So, I mean, as a military kid, every time we moved, because we moved every 2.5 years, and it was usually 2 days before my birthday.
Oh my gosh. That's
yeah.
Crazy.
So birthday parties were like the week before my birthday because we were going to be moving.
Yeah.
And every move, you were like, I don't want to move. I want to stay here. Don't make me move. Oh,
Right.
This life sucks. And so you move and then you still complain because now you've moved and now you got to make new friends again and all that fun gobbledygook you got to do as a kid.
Yeah.
Elementary school, not so many cliques as they are as you get further into school. So it's a little easier. But again, about the time you started making real good friends, it was time to move again.
Right.
So, But I did enjoy it because I lived in the South. I lived in the North. I lived on the East Coast. So many different people, cultures, way of living, all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah. That's like the best part of moving because, like you said, it sucks and you make friends and then you have to move again. And
right.
But you get to experience so many different cultures within even this country.
Right.
The North is so different from the South versus East Coast and West Coast and Central and everything.
Exactly. We did move at one point to Italy. So we lived there for about 2.5 years as well. That was a cultural shock, to say the least.
I'm sure.
The school I went to is what they call a DOD school. And so it was all us military brat kids that went to school together.
Right.
Our class was very small. Like there was 7 fifth graders, like 8 sixth graders. So we were in the same class.
Wow.
And the teacher would teach one grade and give them work and then teach the other grade and give them work. That way she was teaching both classes.
Right.
And it was the same in 7th and 8th grade. We had one teacher. And she taught this grade and then she taught that grade. Wow. One of the things I really enjoyed over there in that school environment was that we would have like, I won't say cultural appreciation so much, but maybe where we would bring a dish that was related to our history, whether it was German, English, Turkish, Greek, Filipino, and just have a big potluck.
Yeah.
So then you got to try different types of food from different cultures. And then you tell a story about that culture.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. I enjoyed that. And then
I love that.
My cultural shock coming back to the United States after being in Italy.
I don't think people understand, like, yes, it's a culture shock going over there, going to another country, but then it's also a culture shock when you come back and you have to adapt to, the United States way of doing things again.
The main thing that I don't have a lot of memories so much, but one of the One of the ones that really freaked me out when I came back to the States was I watched a commercial, and some people will know this commercial. It's like a frying pan. This is your brain. Here's the egg. Then they crack it. Your brain on drugs. And I was like, what in the world is this? And why are we discussing this? Because that wasn't something before I left that was on TV. And then overseas, we only had one channel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would come home from school when I lived in Italy, and I would watch Good Morning America when I got out of school.
Oh my gosh.
Otherwise, it was local news or old TV shows. So everything we watched was on VHS.
Well, and that's like the time difference too.
Right.
From here to there is crazy, because when you guys are, in Italy getting out of school, you know, preparing to start your evenings, we're just waking up and starting our day.
Exactly. So, and then, let's see, I moved here right at the middle of my 8th grade year. So I was not used to actual middle school.
And so it's that so different than what you just did.
Yeah. Well, there was only 8 of us, and then you go to a 2-story and you got to move classes and totally scare the crap out of you.
Yeah. I'm sure it felt like because when we're in high school, we think like, oh, this campus is huge, but then you get to a college campus or a university campus, and it's this huge thing. So I'm sure it kind of felt like the same thing of going from the school in Italy, where it was just this tiny little kind of bubble, to one of these massive high schools over here. It's like, that same transition in a sense from high school to college, where you're going from a smaller school to a massive campus where you're having to change buildings and even, change campuses depending even where you go. So I'm sure.
Oh, and then my dad got out of the service. Was it 10th grade? I think it was my 10th grade year. He retired. It was right after Desert Storm, Desert Shield. And we moved from South Carolina to North Carolina. We were only in North Carolina 6 months and moved to Tennessee. So I went to 3 different high schools in 1 year.
Oh my gosh. And that's it blows my mind, the people who move, 3 or 4 different high schools in 4 years, because, a different school for each grade, but then 3 different schools for 1 year. That's even crazier. But again, that's just the military way of life sometimes too. And even when you get out, it's like, you can't necessarily just completely let go of that.
Well, the one thing that is, if you've been with or been in the military for an extended amount of time, like 20 years or plus, you move so much that when you retire or your parent retires, you get an itch. Okay.
Yes.
I've been here this long. Time to move. And you're never settled.
Yeah.
Because you're always wanting to move.
Right.
And of course, when you're out of the military, it costs you to move. So you don't move as much.
Yeah, the military doesn't pay for it. You got to find another good job post-retirement to cover those expenses for you.
Exactly. And my thing is, I don't understand, because I have not, or I didn't grow up in my own town, my whole life. I don't understand why people don't go and travel.
Oh, I agree.
There's so much to see, so much to do. It's like you're stuck right here. Go see, go do.
Yeah. The people who haven't even left the state that they're living in, and like, I'm 22. And so I have, been to more states than I can count on my hands.
Right.
And so the people who haven't, left the state that they're living in, it just blows my mind.
Yep.
Because, traveling is scary. Like, I get it. Like, it is nervous. Like, you can be nervous, whatever. But, like, you got to get out there and see this stuff. Like, because this earth is, like, literally incredible.
Exactly.
Seeing the mountains in Scotland would be forever one of my greatest memories.
I'm supposed to go next year.
Gorgeous. Yeah. You're going to love it.
I've been to England. I've been to Ireland. When we lived overseas, we went to Switzerland, Austria, and Germany.
Wow.
So then when I come here and they're like, oh, no, I don't even want to go 4 hours away. Really?
Yeah.
Really? I get on a plane and go 8 hours away.
And you can't even get in the car and drive 4 hours away.
Exactly. And then I got married to a Navy man and moved back to the coast, moved to Virginia, lovely Norfolk, Virginia.
Such a good area.
That was a shock to my system, even though I've been military, at this point, my entire life. Being the spouse was a different turn of events.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Because then you got to deal with the military wives. Whew, some of them can be fun. Some military husbands, they're just as fun.
Yeah. Yep.
Military, I would say from my perspective, military wives and husbands, because I won't exclude husbands, is more like high school.
It really is.
It's all rumors and innuendos, and it's like, oh my, what are we, 12? Come on.
Exactly. Because, I mean, you sit there and, not all military spouses are like this.
Right.
And, there are some great ones out there, but then those people who just have nothing better to do with their day than create drama.
Exactly.
Like, leave me out of it.
Yeah, because I know we had some military wives that we called port wives.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, the husband went out for 6 months. Oh, here comes my boyfriend's ship.
Right.
It's like, really? Okay. I'm sorry. I got married to be with this person, not the entire fleet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was a little bit of a cultural shock. And then learning how to be a married single parent with your spouse gone.
Sure.
For whatever, it could be workups, it could be 6-month cruises. Talking Navy wise, I don't know much about the Army or anything, but your spouse is gone.
We still go through, the deployments and trainings and, some things similar along the lines.
Right. I can't speak on those. I can only speak on the Navy wife side.
Yeah.
That your husband is, or wife, whichever the case is, has their workups, and their workups could be 6 months. And in that 6 months, they're gone for 2 weeks. Then they're gone for a month. And then they're gone for a couple of weeks. And then they're gone for, another month. And then they're gone for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I did. Go ahead.
That can be the hardest part sometimes is you don't necessarily have the full reintegration period.
Right.
Coming and going when it's that fast of a turnaround.
Exactly. And I was pregnant with one of my sons during a workup in 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
And I had a toddler. So it was like, oh God, now I got to do all of this by myself. Thank God I lived in base housing. So the only thing I had to pay for was my phone, the home phone, and cable at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about, oh, am I going to make the rent? Granted, you still get the money for rent, but I didn't have to deal with those everyday bills.
Yeah, it's not another added expense on there.
Yeah, I just had to worry about, take care of a toddler and going to all my doctor appointments.
Exactly.
And he came home.
You got all that, you're good.
Right. He came home 2 weeks later, I had the baby. I was like, oh, that was the best pregnancy ever.
I'm sure you were very excited to get that one over with.
Oh, yeah. And it actually made the 6-month cruise go faster.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because you're chasing around a toddler too.
Yeah.
So you're kept on your toes and you're not necessarily thinking about how much longer you have left of it.
Exactly. It's just, okay, I have an appointment this month. Then I have this one next month. So it breaks it down. Then chasing the toddler, and doing the regular wife things, keeping your house clean, grocery shopping.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's
the normal
not
things
as
you have to do.
Right. I just had to talk my daughter-in-law, like I said, through the year that my son was in Africa.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm like, look, go work. You got the girls, keeping the house squared away. You keep doing, and it goes fast.
Right.
If you keep dwelling on how long he's gone, then it's going to stretch it out, and it's going to make it seem like it's forever till he gets home.
Yeah. And I think that's something, as, we're talking, we see how much has changed in the military, over the years.
Right.
But I think that's one thing that stays the same. And if it's just, you have this long separation ahead of you.
Right.
And it sucks. Like, there's no way to get around that. It just sucks. But if you keep going, if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, if you have to take baby steps, if you have to crawl, that's what you got to do. But you have to keep moving forward. You can't just sit there and stop. And sometimes, you have to take a slower pace, and that's okay. But you have to keep moving forward.
Well, that's like the whole communication with your spouse.
Yeah.
That's on deployment, whatever it is. When my dad was in, we used cassette tapes, and we talked on one side and sent it to him. And then he would talk on the other side to answer questions, tell us what a good job we did on a report card, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And there was letters. That was it for communication. Today, you've got the wives that can FaceTime, they can email, which can get you a letter automatically. Where back then it was really snail mail, and it could take a couple of weeks before you got anything.
Yeah.
It kind of irritates me when I hear wives or husbands complaining about not hearing from them and all this other stuff. Okay, first of all, is the system down? Because that can happen. It's the internet.
Yeah, that is true.
Depending on where they're at, they may have to stop communication so that whomever doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
But I mean, you get to FaceTime, you get to email, you get phone calls. My dad would be on a 6-month cruise. We never got a phone call.
Right.
So that's what kind of irritates me. I mean, yes, you still miss your spouse, no doubt, but it's not the same as, from, let's say, even part of the 90s.
Right.
From the 90s down, we didn't have that.
Yeah. And the technology advances it blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Even, as young as I am, it blows my mind, the advances that we've had, from, the last deployment my dad was on was in 2011. And it was that was just starting the hype of Skype coming around.
Right.
And all of that. And I'm like, it's just crazy to me how we can literally connect with whoever we want in the world just from our phone.
Yep.
Just at the tips of our fingers, we have access to connect with the entire world.
Exactly.
And that's not how it used to be.
No.
I'm still a big fan of writing letters. I love writing letters, getting letters, and that just, is a dying,
right.
Something that's not just, nobody wants to write letters anymore because it takes longer to get the message or to even write it rather than just text it or call someone.
You might actually make me cry. The last letter I got was was 4 years ago from my grandmother.
Wow.
And she passed away in 2020.
Wow.
And it's just, nobody does. They email, they text, they call, they FaceTime.
Yeah.
You don't get letters. The only stuff that comes in the mail is freaking bills and junk mail.
I know it's no longer fun going to the mailbox anymore. The only time it's fun is when you have a package coming. And even then, it's 2-day shipping from Amazon. So
yeah. See, and that was the thing when we lived overseas. If we ordered anything, it came from the United States because back then you'd get the JCPenney's catalog or the Sears catalog, something like that.
Yeah.
And, funny story. At one point, this is puberty hitting me. I'm 12, 13 years old. And my mom had ordered me some sandals for the summer.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, I will get the size that I'm wearing because she's only like in a 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. By the time the sandals got there, which was the size my mom got, which was a 7.5. So in a month, I went from a 5.5 to a 9.
Oh my gosh.
So by the time they got there, she got new sandals. I didn't.
Yeah, because that's how long it takes.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, okay, I sent you a package. All right, I'll see it sometime in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Where now you can get stuff next day. Sometimes you can get it in the same day, depending on, plus we've got all these Uber and DoorDash and everything else. You can get it lickety split.
And even nice. Getting packages overseas is so much easier now, from the United States to overseas. If you're mailing from the US, it is insanely expensive compared to mailing from overseas to here for some reason. But, you're able to get things, in a timely manner instead of, waiting for it for
exactly
a month, for weeks. And then you forget about it by the time it gets there.
But then it's a good surprise. You're like, oh, exactly. What did I get?
Yeah, because you don't know what it is. And then, and I'm sure at some points too, there were, so many packages in the queue that it's like, okay, well, what's this one? And it's that excitement of opening it to figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah, I really do miss the military camaraderie.
Yeah.
Because it is, especially if you live on base. If you live on base, then it's a small community. Everybody knows everybody. You know your neighbors. The kids know all the kids in the neighborhood. So, and don't you dare do anything as a kid because somebody knows your parent.
And then you're going to get in trouble and your parents are getting in trouble too.
Right. You got to watch what you do.
Yes.
So I do miss that because even I live in a subdivision and I know like 3 neighbors.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's like, okay, where'd everybody go? Why don't we know our neighbors anymore?
Right. And it's a fact too, in those military communities on post, you watch out for everyone around you.
Exactly.
A lot of people will say like, I didn't have to lock my doors. I didn't have to like worry about, those security things. And then you move off post and it's like, oh, we're in a completely different world.
Exactly.
And that's just because of, like you said, the camaraderie within the military community, those people that you maybe know for 30 minutes, a day, and you build that trust with them instantly.
Exactly. I do miss it. This civilian life is not for me.
I know. That's why I was like, okay, we're going to, change paths here. But, it's that lifestyle. And once you get it, you just crave it. And then it's hard to let it go. And, I was 12 when my dad retired and it was the hardest transition out. I thought transitioning between living in Ohio to Texas to Florida, I thought that was hard. But it's when you really have to kind of say goodbye to that lifestyle.
Exactly.
That's when it gets hard.
Yeah. It really, that's why I guess I married a military man. My dad had retired and it was just like, okay, let's keep doing this. I like this lifestyle, but no, I haven't been with the military for quite some time.
It's hard. And once you have to kind of, say goodbye to it. And, when you're young, you can marry into it. You can join, you can, do whatever and stay connected to it. But then as you start to I am not looking forward to retiring at this point. It's a ways away, but I'm not looking forward to retiring.
No, but at your age going in, if you just did 20 years, you can be retired by the time you're 42, 43 years old. And not many people can say, I can retire now And I'm still young enough to I could start another career if I wanted to. I could travel.
Right. You can do it all.
Yeah. It was like, oh, excuse me. My son went in I think he was 21 or 22 when he went in. Yeah. So, when he retires, he's going to be in his early 40s.
Right. And I don't think a lot of people realize that about the military life.
Right.
And the benefits you get from it are just, and retirement's just one of them.
Right.
And that's literally what makes it worth it.
Yeah. And you can make lifelong friends from basic training, from AIT, different duty stations. Even though you move on, you still for some reason, you may come up with some deployment and you be deployed at the same place that you were with somebody at your last deployment.
Yeah.
So
and it's so unpredictable because you never know when you're going to cross paths with someone again. And,
exactly.
We were talking about technology earlier, and, it's so easy to stay connected with those people that you meet, from military child all the way up through service member and retirement. Like, you can stay connected so easily with that whole spectrum of people that you meet. And I think that's like my favorite part of technology is that reason, the ability to do that. And it just makes it so much easier. And it makes it that transition, out or transition between different locations so much easier.
Yeah. Because I know there's, back in my day, there was friends that I did write and they wrote back and forth to me whenever we would move or whatever. But then after a while, they taper off and then you lose contact. And the furthest I've gotten to finding any friends that I went to school with, it had been probably 20 years since I talked to her and I found her. And I was like, oh my God. Now, like an elementary best friend, I've still been searching for her, but I have no idea how to find her. One, she could have got married.
Right.
So her last name would have changed. I have no clue where she would be.
Right.
So that's one thing about not having that technology back then is you couldn't keep in touch easily. There wasn't Facebook and all this we're friends. When it was over, unfortunately.
Yeah. When you had to move, that was, say goodbye. And then, you have an address that you can write to, but then at the same point, that address is going to change. It's going to get lost.
Yes.
In translation and
exactly.
It falls off. And
exactly.
You make new friends and then you kind of start to forget about some of your old friends, not necessarily intentionally, but it just that's the way it happens.
Especially as a kid, you're just moving, not necessarily moving on, but your life is going on. And because you don't see them on a daily and you're not talking to them daily, you just kind of slowly separate.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, kids are so tunnel vision.
Yep.
That it's just, like I said, it's unintentional. It's just, you see something and that's what you can cling to. And then when it's gone and you have to move on. It gets harder later in life, when you start hitting those teenage years and you kind of start understanding things a little bit more.
Right.
But then, even then you kind of have to learn to say, okay, we were friends for this period of time. We're both going to be going our separate directions. Mm-hmm. And, hopefully we can keep in touch.
Yeah, it's the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Because I even now, a friend of mine, she doesn't quite understand where I'm coming from when I say it upsets me that they changed Fort Bragg's name.
Yeah.
I'm like, but now where I'm from isn't there. And she's like, no, it's still there. I'm like, no, it's not Fort Bragg.
It's different.
It's not where I was born. And she's like, well, it's still the same. I'm like, look, you grew up in the same place your entire life.
Yeah.
I didn't. So my quote unquote home isn't my home anymore.
Right.
And I've looked up old schools I went to. Oh, yep, that's torn down. Yep, that's torn down. So anything I had a connection to could be gone.
Right. And that's why
we, in the military life, you have to kind of live with the saying of home is where the military sends us. Home is where, we are.
Right.
And it's hard to do that. And it's hard to let go of something that was once home.
Right.
And then, even going back to, places that we've lived, it's so different.
Yep.
It's so different. Nothing stays the same. And then once those people who you were with start to leave too, because that was your home, the community that you grew up with, the community that was there. And so once that community leaves too, it's hard to even to feel like that's home.
Right. And that's why, I'll get people on the internet, you're just talking or whatever, nobody that you know. And they're like, where are you from? Well, I'm from nowhere.
Yeah.
What do you mean you're from nowhere? I'm like, okay, do you want to know where I was born, the last place I lived, or where I live now? Because I'm not from anywhere. I've lived in South Carolina 2 times. I've lived in Virginia like 4 different times. I lived in Great Lakes twice. I lived in Italy. I lived in Tennessee. I mean,
right.
What do you want to know? You want my whole itinerary? I'm not from anywhere. I'm just here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how it goes. And once you move somewhere, you kind of have to start trying to make that a home, because the quicker you can make it feel like home, whether that's like finding a new restaurant or, whatever that might be for you.
Right.
You have to start doing that, because the quicker you can do that, the quicker you're going to be able to get in those situations and be like, okay, I can start kind of, letting down my walls a little bit.
Right.
Feeling comfortable in the area.
Well, it's like even with moving, even as a civilian, because, before we had, Mayflower or whatever come in, they packed all your stuff and it was gone.
Right.
When I do it, I pack, I have everything. I do it a lot better than Mayflower. But I pack it up. And when I get to my new destination, I'm unpacked and it's a house within 24 hours.
Right. Because we know how to do that.
And you got these people take a week. They're like, oh, I just don't know. I'm like, what is taking you so long? Everything. What? I've had this done.
Unpack the boxes, put things where they belong, and be done.
Exactly. Like, because my daughter-in-law and son just bought a house and she still hasn't unpacked, and they've been there. They've been there a month now.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is taking you so long? I would have already been done. I want my house to be my house.
Right.
And I don't want to look at boxes.
I don't know many people who want to look at boxes. It annoys me when I have to see boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. You got to make your house as soon as you get there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That kind of translates into what I was going to ask you to wrap it up. But what is one piece of advice that you would give to another military child, another military spouse, someone who has connection to the military life?
I would say for a child, it will be difficult. It's going to be difficult because you make your friends and then you leave. But take in everywhere you go. The personalities, the people, the culture, the sights, the smells, take it all in, because it will form who you are as an adult. You will have more empathy and see things more open-minded because you have moved so much. You see things differently than the average person that grew up in one place.
Absolutely.
For a wife, if she's somebody that has never been connected to the military, or a husband who's never been connected to the military, take it step by step.
Yes.
Understand that life is going to be different, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 20 years. It is going to be different. But at the beginning, just take it step by step. Don't rush it. Understand that your spouse, that is their job. Yeah. And they can't just drop what they're doing to come home.
Right.
Whether it's deployment or they're at their job, it doesn't matter. They can't just drop it and just enjoy it. Again, take in the sights, meet new people, open your mind to different atmospheres, cultures, restaurants, whatever it is. Be open-minded and enjoy the ride.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice, because if you can't open your mind to it and enjoy the journey, then it's going to be more miserable than exciting. And this lifestyle can be exciting, but it's what you make of it. So
exactly.
But thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing so much about your journey through military life. I really enjoyed having you.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, follow, and comment. Also, be sure to check out Instagram and Facebook at Grace of a Military Child and Life for more awesome content. For information on the podcast, Military Child Bigs and Littles, GoAMCL blog, or other resources, visit www.goamcl.org. You can also email me at Gracie, that's GRACIE @GOAMCL.org with any questions or comments. To be a guest on the podcast, you can schedule it at www.goamcl.org/schedule a podcast, all one word, or contact me via social media or email. Stay tuned for the next episode where another incredible story is shared.